What's up? My name is Steve, and if you click this video because the thumbnail happens to look a lot like Alex Ramosi, then thanks for being here. And to all 11 returning subscribers, thank you so much for returning. In this video, I'm going to be talking about exactly why I hate goals and what to do instead. And so if you're to look at goals as we approach the new year here in the calendar year of 2025, one thing that people do is they often set what we call New Year's resolutions, which basically just means something that you say out loud on December 31st so that you can justify excessive drinking on December 31st. It's like, don't worry, the New Year's resolution starts tomorrow. But does it really though? Have you done anything to make it start tomorrow? Or do you just have a third drink? I was going to name a type of alcohol. I don't really know alcohol. Anyway, in this video, what we're going to be talking about is how commitments mean far more than goal setting. So why do I hate goal setting? Well, what do goals mean? First question. Goals just mean, I wish to have something that I don't currently have, and by not having the thing, I will make myself unhappy. Goals are like the most spoiled thing that we could possibly say. It's like, yeah, life is so good. I actually have this roof over my head. I got a person who loves me. I got tons of food. I'm going to set a goal. It's a very, we only do it when we have met, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you only do it when you reach a certain point. I don't know why I referenced the triangle. I think it's a triangle. What I get at, though, is that goals have pretty much been created as a way that we can make ourselves unhappy and use it as a measuring stick as to where we are not, rather than celebrating the positions in which we are. My thing is, I'm still a huge fan of growth and progress, and I think goals, what they were intended to be was, a form of, okay, I will set myself up for this outcome, which is obviously going to benefit me in some way. What they've turned into, though, is giving ourselves an excuse to, nobody gives you any sort of training on how to set a goal correctly. It's we have an acronym that we reference, but that acronym was used for corporate America, and now people use it for weight loss goals. But the people in corporate America also disagree with it because it's too vague. But anyway, so realistically though, if I say, hey, what's your goal? You would probably say whatever your goal was. Let's just say it's $10,000 a month, or scale my business to 10 million bucks, whatever. Be like, that's a great goal. Well, if I ask you, what are you committed to doing? Or what are you committed to? Those things don't line up. And so the difference between who you're committed to become and what outcome you feel entitled to have are two different things. However, the person who is committed to something has a way higher likelihood than the person who just has it as a goal or a New Year's resolution or something that they say December 31st or something on their vision board, etc. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly the types of commitment that exists, actions that you can take in order to increase the likelihood that you get to the outcome that you wish to have, or you could just not wish to have an outcome that also works. I will take the stance that I think that the commitments that you make are ones that make you a better human being, ones that can make you either more rational, healthier, be more useful, be kinder. And so my two goals stay the same: be useful, be kind. How I go about doing that this year, I've committed, and I will say exactly what those things are in the end of this video. So let's take a look at this. If we just look at goals versus commitments, it is way easier to miss a goal than it is to break a promise with yourself. Because number one, when we set a goal, there's often a lack of strategy, there's a lack of plan, there's a whole lot of optimism, there's a lot of celebration, there's a lot of clapping. People around you will say, that's a great goal, super proud of you. Now, the difference is commitment is the actual indicator of whether you get to the goal or not. And when you say that you're committed to something, commitment often isn't met with as much celebration. So if you say, yeah, I'm really committed to my goals right now, it still sounds different. But if you just say, yeah, I'm committed to being at home and working on my business, it's like, you're no fun, lame, have another drink, whatever. So the underlying message that I wish to communicate from this video is that commitments will go a lot further than goals. Now, if you just think about it this way, and I referenced a couple pieces of data, but if you think about it this way, if I have the goal to lose 100 pounds and I just say I'm going to lose 100 pounds and it's okay, I'm going to move more, eat less. Okay, great. That's some strategy, sure. But if I say I'm committed to losing 100 pounds, and if I don't, for every pound that I don't lose, I'm going to give $1,000 to my enemy. So if I'm going to give $1,000, light it on fire by the end of next year for every pound that I don't lose, meaning if I lose 40 pounds, then I have to light 60 grand on fire. Do you think that I'm going to have a higher likelihood of getting there? Yes. because there's something that is a commitment device that has actually been installed in order to help me get there, or that I've used as a consequence that if I don't get there, something happens. Before I move into like, how we can use commitment and different types of commitment styles, think about it this way. If I were to ask you, what is your goal? Versus if I were to ask you, what are you committed to doing? Those feel like two totally different answers. And so not only when you think about like making a commitment, you're going to be able to set a more accurate goal just in consequence of changing the language that you use. Because it's like whenever people talk about goal setting, it's like, dream big, dream as big as you possibly can. But it's like, okay, well, what are you committed to doing realistically? And then how can you set up yourself, others, and your environment in order to be conducive that that goal happens? Best way for us to accomplish that, in my opinion, is going to be looking at the actions that need to occur prior to obtaining the goal, and then the commitments that need to be maintained on a day-to-day basis. This is where I think people start to move in the right direction with goals, is they'll say, like, break down your goals so that you're always seeing daily progress. Totally, that totally tracks. Like, if you have the goal of make $1 million, and that just means that every day you have to have a surplus of cash flow equal to, I think it's like $3,300, 3286 or something like that, 3287. I used to know the number, but let's say that you have the cash surplus goal daily. You have to have an inflow greater than $3,300, or call it whatever it is. Well, that means at the end of the year, for sure, you're going to have $1 million and you have a daily goal. Well, what that misses, in my opinion, is it gives you a daily target, but it doesn't give you a daily commitment. Rather than saying it's like, yes, daily, I will make 100 phone calls. Each phone call produces me $30 or $33. So I know that after making 100 phone calls, I have made $3,300. There's that like tail end commitment. And it's like for every day that I don't is a day that I will not hit my goal. Or for every day that I don't, I will follow some form of consequence, etc. So just by changing the language alone of not like, what is your daily goal? It's like, what is your daily commitment? And when you think about these things and these words, goal specifically, as a promise that you're keeping to yourself, a commitment that you're keeping to yourself, you'll have a higher likelihood of doing that, because we value integrity, whether like we do it actively or not. Like we value integrity, and after so many days of like making a promise and breaking it with yourself, like you're gonna get tired of yourself. And you could argue like, yeah, this is where self-sabotage, whatever behavior comes from, is just like an inability to do it. Well, then I would just say like reevaluate the commitment, make it something more attainable, adjust your environment, your circumstances to allow you to do it. So video for another time. I just take the stance of like, if the one thing that you do moving into 2025 is you remove the word goal and you start to take on promises and commitment to yourself, greater than goal, that like promises greater than goal, I'll just like throw that hashtag, just make that hashtag right now. That would be my request. Go viral on a hashtag that I made up on a YouTube video. Sounds good. All right, so I've read, I don't know, you see the bookcase behind me. I've read a lot of books. Audible has way more books than that bookshelf. And I started to notice trends between these books, is whether it was like stock trading or fitness or business leadership or, I guess those are the things that I read. There's about, especially books that have been written in the last like 5 years, usually those books exist of about one chapter that talks about the plan. And then it's about 13 to 14 chapters of how to stick to the plan, or how the author stuck to the plan even when things were tough. And so when we just think about that, like you have the plan, and then there's all the things in which you have to do to stick to the plan. So if we just know that to be true, that tells me right away that sticking to the plan is going to be hard. So I'm just going to plan for it to be hard. And like the harder, the bigger the commitment, like the bigger the promise that I'm going to make to myself. Like, you know, if you're sitting around, you get no money in your bank account, and you're committed to making $1 million in 2025, huge commitment. So it's good, like expect it to be hard. And just by expecting it to be hard, you're going to be well ahead. So at this point, you have some form of goal that you wish to accomplish in 2025. Awesome. And let's just turn that goal into a commitment. And so whatever your goal is, if you're writing it down or if you're looking at it somewhere, if you just think of it, and if you look at that as a goal, you can definitely do it. If you look at it as a commitment, ask yourself, can you do this? And not from like a self-doubting kind of perspective, but it's like, do you have the environment? Like, do you have the circumstances to allow you to do this? Do you have the support from others to allow you to do this? And do you have like the facts for yourself, like the self-competency that you can do this? So let's dive even deeper into this. When you set a goal or when you have a commitment and you're now looking at this commitment, it's like, okay, I have to ensure that the things that I have lined up are going to allow me, or at least give me the highest probability chance of getting to that goal. So you have three things. You have yourself, you have other people in your environment, and then you have your environment or the circumstances that you're in. So what we can do is we can look at how hard of a commitment you can make in each one of these things. So if I become Tiny Steve, this is what I call the what are we, the scale of commitment. So here's what are we on a scale of commitment. Whenever we think of commitment, we always think of relationships, kind of funny. And so it's like, we're seeing each other. We're seeing each other. We're going on dates. We're seeing each other. We went on a first date. We're seeing each other, right? Pretty low, pretty soft commitment. However, on this whole spectrum over here, you got 2 kids, 6 dogs. That's pretty committed. Now, the only commitment further beyond this, you send a holiday card. That's committed. So if we just look at this and we just think about relationships and our spectrum of commitment, well, it's really easy to look at commitments in the same level that we look at our goals. So if we just remove all these things that probably entertain myself, that my video editor is going to be like, why the hell are we keeping this in? And because Steve laughed at himself, we're keeping it in. So what we will do from here is we can dictate, well, how hard of a commitment do you make when it comes to yourself, your relationship with others, and also the environment that you're in. So a really, really good commitment, so a super hard commitment, if we look at, I'll just use like that weight loss example, which is if I set a goal of 100 pounds of weight loss, and for every pound that I don't lose, I send $1,000. It's like, wow, that's a pretty strong commitment. Like there are some consequences that is going to occur, at least relative to like that, like $1,000 for every pound that I don't lose. Like that would hurt me personally. Like I'd just be like I just dislike losing money. That's the one time commitment that you make. Then you also have the day-to-day commitments that you maintain. So this is where people will say things like, oh yeah, no, like have a daily target, have a daily goal, etc. Well, a daily commitment that you could look at when it comes to hitting your goal, like if you wanted to wake up at 5 a.m. Well, a super soft commitment. So if we just look at the situation of 5 a.m. wake up times, a super soft commitment would be like alarm and you allow for snooze. Alarm, allow for snoozies. Snooze. That's not how snooze is spelled, but we're going with it. And then you have somewhat of a moderate commitment, which is you have bedtime. Let's do bedtime plus alarm in another room. I'm not going to actually do this. You got bedtime and you got an alarm in another room. That looks like a little bit harder of a commitment. Then you have the hardest commitment that you could possibly make, which is at 5 a.m. Somebody slams open your door, sticks you with adrenaline, and you have no other option at that point other than to wake up because you now have adrenaline in your system. So that is 100% committed. If somebody walks into your room, I don't know the situation, somebody walks into your room with a shot of adrenaline, they wake you up, you're super alert, ready for the day. So if we look at, and these are the day-to-day commitments that we make that have a high likelihood or increase the likelihood that we get to our goals long term. Okay, so let's actually take a second here and sort through how the heck do we set a commitment. Let's just say that we have a goal, and I'm just going to use a monetary one. You can plug in whatever you wish. It all works the same. So let's say that we have a goal of $1 million by the end of the year. So end of 2025, we now have $1 million. Okay, great. Well, what are the things that we need to do in order to get to $1 million? Now we can break this down monthly, which is, 88 grand, 88. We all know this. And then we can break it down daily, which is about 3 grand. So we know we need to make about $3,000 a day. Okay. So now we have a daily goal. Great. So we have a daily target. But what we don't have, like if I was to go say, and I love this Hey Mom test, which is something that I got from my coach, Dr. Trevor Kashi, which is like, if you give yourself a target or a thing to do, and it doesn't pass the Hey Mom test, try again. So for example, if I were to go, hey mom, watch me make $3,000. It's like, huh? How do I watch you do that? It's like, I can't see you doing that. So it doesn't pass the observable behavior. So what we want to turn $3,000 as a daily target into is a daily commitment that we make that makes making $3,000 happen. And then we can go into it even deeper and look at it as like, okay, well, what are the things that's going to increase the chances that that happens? So let's just say I'm in sales, and in order for me to make 3,000 bucks a day, I have to contact, or I'm a business owner, and let's just say that in order for me to make 3,000 bucks a day, I have to make 300 outbound dials. Great. So now we have an even closer daily target. So we've taken our target of 3,000 and we've given ourselves a daily thing to do, because making $3,000 isn't always up to you. Making 300 dials is 100% up to you. So here we go. Now we actually have something that we can now we have something that we can do and something that we can observe. This is where commitment gets interesting. Anytime that you commit to something, two things occur. One, you do more of one thing. Two, you do less of something else. If we know that's going to happen anyways, let's just think about the things that we're going to do more of and the things that we're going to do less of. So if I know that in order for me to do 300 dials, I'm going to have to increase my work hours. So we have an increase of work hours. So I'll just say work hours go up. Great. How much do they go up by? Let's say 4 hours per day. So that means that I'm going to be working 16 hours a day. Awesome. See, this is why we do the commitment thing. Some of you heard 16 hours a day and you went, holy fuck. Yeah. So 16-hour work days. So what are the things that I can do to make it easier to work 16 hours a day? What are the things that I can implement with myself, with others, and with the circumstances that I'm in that is going to allow me to work 16 hours a day? Well, then you get really gnarly and you can say, okay, well, I'm going to have to, look at my energy. And in order to be energized to work 16 hours a day, probably going to have to make sure that I get a good night of sleep. So go to bed at night at the same time, wake up at the same time. That's a really good thing that I can do. Then I can give myself a checkbox on doing that. And I can look at the progress and I can measure that. Okay, well, that's one thing that I can do. And then another thing that I can do within, and we could get go even deeper into that of in order for me to get to bed on time, I have to change this circumstance with this commitment that I have with somebody else. Which the whole the mag daddy of all of this is you just say, look, I'm committed to making $1 million. Rather than you say, I'm committed to going to bed at 8:30, because you going to bed at 8:30 actually increases the chance that you hit $1 million, because that's the commitment that you will make. So what I get at is that now you have three things that you can change. You got what you do, what other people do for, with you, against you, etc., and the commitments and the communication and commitments that they have with you. Then you also have what your environment allows you to do. So if we look at, 16 hours of work per day, 300 dials is what it's going to take in order for me to make $1 million. Okay, how can I make my environment support me making $1 million? Better yet, how can I make my environment support me to work 16 hours a day and make 300 dials? Is there any way that I can make 300 dials in less time? Is there any way that I can make those 300 dials better? Is there any way that I can, etc.? You get where I go with this. Setting this big lofty goal, a lot different when we actually think about it of what am I actually willing to commit to day to day? So if you look at this and it's okay, well, in order for me to go from no money in the bank account to $1 million, I'm going to have to commit to working 16 hours a day. I'm going to probably get 298 no's and strangers who hate me, followed by 2 people who say yes so that I can send them more stuff. Am I committed to doing that? And then if you say yes, then great. Then we look at what you can do to stick to the plan, which would be next. But if you ask that question and you're like, no, I'm not willing to do that, then I'd recommend you just make a smaller commitment to yourself, rather than giving yourself this big, hairy, audacious goal of making $1 million, realizing the work required, and then not doing the work, or just defeating yourself for doing the work. Because here's the thing, life is short and it's all made up. So if you set a goal and the only purpose that goal solves is a reason to beat yourself up, in my opinion, you just set the wrong goal. You set the goal too big, dog. And so rather than listening to external pressure of people telling you dream big, big dream, but whatever, it's no, just what can you actually commit to? And you can ask the question, what can you commit to? What are you willing to commit to? What is required in order for you to get to your goal? And how different are the two things? So if we just say it's look, what is required in order for me to make $1 million in the next year is I got to work 16 hours. And and this is 7 days a week. Like, this ain't no joking around. And in order for me to do that, that's not divided by, that was an underline, times 7. There we go. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to give up social gatherings, going to have to give up drinking, going to have to give up cartoons, going to have to, and like, you go through the list and you go, you know what? $1,000,000 is not worth this life. Well, then great. You can make that decision. You're a grown-ass human. I take no stance. I'm on YouTube. You're watching this video. I don't see you. You could do whatever you want. You could literally flip me off right now, and I would have no idea. So you can make a value equation for you of like, okay, is this worth this? No. Well, then what you could do is you could just back it off. And you could then base your goal based off of the things that you're willing to do, which in my opinion is what you should do. So if you look at this and it's like, okay, well, I'm definitely not willing to work 16 hours, 7 days a week, but you know what? I'm definitely willing to work 12 hours, 5 days a week. So 16 times 7, that is the old 106 hours a week. Whereas 12, this is 60. So you go from 100 that's basically a 45%, a 40% decrease in output. So rather than you make your goal $1,000,000, maybe you make your goal 600 grand, because you're willing to do the things that somebody who makes 600 grand will do in a year in order to obtain that goal. And as long as you say like, hey, this is what I'm willing to do, and you do it every day, well, 5 days a week in this case, and you do that, then number one, you've made a commitment to yourself that you can keep, by and large, the most important thing. And you've also lowered the goal into something way more realistic. And shit, man, like, even if you look at this, this is if you work the same 12 hours every day for a full year and you don't get any better. Well, look, like, if you're also to think about like how you can increase and how you can improve over the course of the year and how you can get more out of that 12 hours that you're working, well, then great, you might be able to apply like a 45% rather than a 40%, whatever I did, in order to obtaining that goal. Main thing that I care about is that, like, if you set a goal and you look at the work required in order to do it, or you avoid looking at more specifically, you avoid looking at the work required, and then you get mad at yourself for not hitting the goal next year, it's like, dude, you did that to yourself. And so whenever I set goals, I always try to break it down to like, this is the thing that I'm committed to getting. In order for me to be committed to getting this, these are the monthly commitments, weekly commitments, and the daily commitments that I need to have. Am I willing to make that? Like, do I make that trade-off? And if I'm going to make that trade-off, then I'm going to make that trade-off. But there's been times where I've looked at the trade-off and I've been like, not right now. Nah, I'm going to go like hit the beach for a little bit. And that's cool because, well, at least that's what I say. Other people may tell you that I'm wrong. I don't really give a fuck. Like, life's short. We're all going to die. Go to the beach. So now we have a pretty good frame of like, okay, this is the things that it will take in order for me to get to this year-long commitment that I have. These are the daily commitments that I have to make. And then you get to make the decision. Do I want to make this? Yes, no, no. Okay, great. Make a smaller commitment. Yes. Okay, cool. So then the next big thing, now you've just like done the thing of like establishing the goal, which great. Honestly, most people don't even make it that far. The second part from here is one thing that is alluded to a lot, which is like the actual sticking to the plan of the goal. So, and when you do it, when you go through your goal the way that I just said, then you have a pretty good understanding of like the work required in order for you to hit the goal. So you're not like caught off guard or stressed out when there is like something that gets in your way. The main thing, honestly, is just like expect for the goal to be hard. Like, it kind of boggles my mind, but like 100% of things in life have some form of difficulty. Like, you have cortisol in your bloodstream, like at all times. Like, you will never get rid of cortisol. And so you could totally like try to meditate and like go and like, bunch of ayahuasca. You still have cortisol. Like, minor, like daily hassles exist. There's going to be things that stress you out. And so the amount of stress often feels relative, because the more successful that you become, the bigger your problems get. And the bigger that your problems get, and if you talk to people who don't have the same level of success as you do, they can often make your problems seem a lot bigger than they actually are. But to you, like, you've solved problems similar to this one. Like, it's not like you went from like customer refunds. It's like you've probably had a $200 refund before you had a $200,000 refund or whatever, or an unhappy customer. You get the idea. When you look at your plan, just expect for there to be problems. Like, expect for there to be things that throw you off pace, and like expect for, like, if your goal is to make $1 million and you plan every single dollar that you will spend it on, etc., or inconvenient expense comes up, or if your goal is weight loss and then a kid's birthday party with a piece of cake, or like, you know, you accidentally like fucking, you know, slip and fall on a stack of Oreo cookies. Like, I've done it. And so, like, when these things happen, like, we know that things are going to get in our way. It's about planning for the things that, when they get in our way, how, number one, how we handle them and how we recover from them. There's one thing that you can do in order to increase the chances that you hit your goal is you increase the amount of frustration that you can handle on the way to your goals. So what that looks like is, obviously, you're not going to hit your goal day one. Things will get frustrating. Shit happens. Pretty straightforward. So as things get frustrating, whether it's like something blocks you, there's resistance, just always remember that, like, you can handle the frustration. Like, you've made it this far. What will happen though is, depending on the time of the day, or like how much, or like your optimism will fade, or it's like January 17th, whatever, your frustration tolerance will begin to deplete. And it's going to become more and more difficult in order to power through it. So this is where, like, the state of transformation and growth actually happens, in my opinion. And this is going to sound, whatever. I was going to say this sounds silly, but like, you've made it this far, you know, most things I say sound silly. One thing that I had to learn is what it takes to actually work, because a lot of like my working was just coaching. And like, when you're coaching, you get immediate feedback from the person. Like, it's easy because it's social, and like, I've just gravitated towards coaching. Like, I've coached in some capacity every day for the past 15 years of my life. Like, I've been a coach. And that's a crazy sentence. Anyway, what I get at is, when I began working and I started writing more, the reward that I got from the writing, which is getting more clear on my thinking, for sure. But there was also just like, man, I got tired. Like, my back got stiff. Like, I wanted to distract myself, look around, light a candle, do anything other than what was in front of me. And it just became like this, like, okay, like, I was getting frustrated because I wasn't getting creative, whatever. And so it set in of like frustration, and then like the tolerance of like, okay, well, you know, I'm frustrated, so it's like, I got to do something else. But the more times that I just ignored that and then got back into it, the easier it became to actually work, and the longer that I would go in between times of frustration. So said another way, like, if you have a weight loss goal, or if you have a financial goal, I'm imagining there's probably other goals that people set, but those are the most common ones, in my opinion. So if you have goals, then there's going to be things that will get in your way, period. How you approach them prior to them occurring, like how you think about them proactively, is going to be a great frame, because you can just, number one, expect that you're going to get bored, you're going to get, you know, cravings for Oreo cookies, etc. So just knowing that that's going to happen is great. How you're actually going to handle it in the moment, you know, you could just do things like push through, willpower, grit, etc. Or you could actually like put something in place. So things that you can put in place as a prevention framework is, number one, you can just recognize like when those things happen. So patterns are a real thing. So if you know that like 4 o'clock, day's done, and you're really craving a candy bar, because every day at 4 o'clock after the day's done, you had a candy bar, well, it makes sense to just, number one, understand that. And then instead of a candy bar, like, just make sure that there's a different substitution in there. Number two, the second thing that you can do is intervention with that. And so it's like, okay, at this time, this thing happened, so I'm going to change the thing that I have. So the candy bar example, like you changing from, you know, you open the cupboard, the candy bar is not there, but instead it's like a pack of gum or an apple, whatever, lower calorie option. Or you just like tape the cupboard shut. You get the idea. And then from there, what you do is like just write that down and have the awareness of like, okay, 4 o'clock rolls around, I really want a candy bar because every day for the past 6 years I've had a candy bar at 4 o'clock. I see this to be something that will hinder my process or hinder my ability to keep the commitment that I made to myself. Now, just expect the fact also that number one, things are going to get in your way. Number two, that you are going to fall off track. And so the most common reason why people stop their New Year's resolution goals is they take this all or nothing, and I just made this stat up, but they take this all or nothing approach where it's like they have to be 100% all the time, etc. And they give themselves no forgiveness, they give themselves no grace when they inevitably fall off track. And so prevention helps a ton. Number two, recover from the damn thing. Like, you ate an Oreo cookie or you ate 12, doesn't matter. It's like, it doesn't mean that you throw this commitment, this promise that you made to yourself to the wayside because you broke it one time. And so you can look at it as like the small break, because oftentimes what will happen is, you know, people will have like this all or nothing mentality when they approach weight loss, or when they approach goals, as they go all in on the thing. And if they do anything outside of that, that one instance, that one Oreo cookie turns into an entire package of Oreo cookies. Or, you know, that one extra $15 on Amazon turns into a $400 Amazon order. Or the, you know, Prime video night, whatever, turns into, like, you get the point of like the all or nothing mentality. It looks like an all or nothing mentality in both ways. And so the prevention framework helps a ton. Second, recovery is that, like, don't let one thing turn into a whole ruined kind of, like, don't let one broken promise turn into a broken commitment. So step one, obviously acknowledge, then just reset from there. Like, if the next time to get back on track is the next opportunity that you have to eat or not eat something, or the next opportunity that you have is to make more money, save more money. You get the idea. And then from there, just like rebuild the damn thing. So the sooner that you can return to baseline and just remind yourself of like, okay, this happened. What can I learn from it? Like, how did I get here? What was the thing that was in place beforehand? Like, how do I get back on track? And just do like a qualitative assessment based on like the actual things that happened, rather than like, oh, I feel like it was no. It's like 4 o'clock rolled around, you wanted a candy bar, you didn't have access to your protein shake, whatever, you had a candy bar. Like, let's move on kind of thing. The last point that I'll make is you can do two things that'll increase the likelihood that you maintain these daily commitments, is because the initial commitment, that's going to be the thing that like is difficult for sure. And the more that you remind yourself of like what you're going to get at the end, so the daily commitment, and then the closer that you can bring the outcome that you wish to obtain into the daily, the higher likelihood that you're going to be to maintaining these daily commitments. And also the easier it's going to feel to make that initial commitment. And so this is why like goals are often driven a lot with like hope and desire, etc. Is that like, man, you got to commit, like, wouldn't it be nice? It's so exciting. Because you're going to make that motivating, or you're going to take that action when you're the most motivated to hit that goal. And so maintaining that for the first like 7 days, huge pain in the ass. And so the more that you can, and this is why vision boards exist, is just to simply remind people of like where they're going and all the benefits that'll get them there. And so giving yourself like daily reminders of like things that will happen when you have your goal, that will increase the likelihood that you maintain the commitment that you had to hitting the goal in the first place. So if we just take this video and we just think about the things that we covered, number one is if you just frame the word goal as commitment, and you just look at this of like, what am I willing to commit to? Then I think that thing is going to be a lot different than the goal that you had. And that's great. And then look at, okay, in order for you to get that, what do you need to do in order to make that commitment come true? So if you break that down into targets, and so this would be like, oh, I need to lose a pound a week. Okay, well, what does it take to lose a pound a week? Well, I have to be in a 500 calorie deficit every day. Okay, in order for me to do that, I have to go on Ozempic. But in order for me to do that, I have to eliminate these 10 foods. I have to buy a gym membership. I have to do this. I got to do this. Okay, am I willing to commit to doing all of these things? No, I'm willing to commit to doing 2 of these things. Okay, cool, great. Then maybe instead of making your goal lose a pound a week, you make it lose a half a pound a week, and like you maintain that. Basically what I get at is that like if you think about this as a commitment, and then you look at the daily commitments required in order to get to that goal, then it gives you an opportunity to reevaluate the commitment that you set out in the first place. So anyway, hopefully this has been useful. I scrolled through YouTube and I saw like fucking 20 videos on people like telling you how to set goals, and It's like, I don't think the setting the goal is the issue. Like, I don't think anybody has a problem just being like taking a dart and just throwing it at a board and being like $10,000 a month. Whoa. It's like, I just don't think that setting the goal is the issue. I think that like having an actual plan and like understanding the commitment required in order to obtain the goal is the issue. And so anybody can create a plan. Anybody can create a plan, but like sticking to the plan, that's where it becomes a huge hassle. And so do yourself a favor now. And it's like, think about ways that you can stick to the plan during 2025. Like, expect it to be hard. Number one, look at things that you can do, look at commitments that you can, or communication that you can have with others to help you get there. And then look at environment changes that you can make to increase the chances that you get there. Honestly, the stronger the commitment that you make, the higher likelihood that you're going to hit your goal. You just have to ask yourself, like, are you willing to make that commitment? And then if you're not, like, just know that I believe in you.